Before starting this tutorial, you should be having a list of tasks that you will be using to schedule your project. In this example, I'm using only 4 tasks, and also you will need to have all the quantities relevant to these tasks. I'm referring to these quantities. Now we will need to feed these tasks with cost information. The first step of cost loading our schedule is to figure out the crew compositions and cost estimates of resources. This information is brought either from planner's experience, or from a company's database, or from cost manuals. For this example, I will be using a cost manual developed by Riyadh Chamber of Commerce. I'm referring to this manual here. This manual. It's developed by Riyadh Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is very similar to the well-known American RS Means manual. Now, I will be using slab formwork to exemplify the way we cost load a schedule. If you go to the table of contents, just as the RS mean is structured, this document is structured into 13 or 16 divisions. Formwork is listed under the concrete division, which is in page 87. So I scroll down to the page, and there you go. So we'll have different sort of forms. We have forms for columns, forms for elevated slabs. We are interested in forms for slab on grade, which is this one. So I'll zoom in. If our slab was 300 millimeters of thickness, this row applies. Yeah, so this row applies to any slab or any slab on grade which is between 150 to 450 millimeters of thickness. We need to make sure that the unit that we are using is consistent with that unit we are using in our quantity takeoff. So in our quantity takeoff, we use square meters, meter squared, and this is consistent. Next, I will need to figure out the composition of crews working on this task. This manual estimates this composition of crews. The estimate is that we need 4 carpenters, 0.125 carpenter foremen, 2 laborers, 0.125 equipment operators. And what this arrow is saying is that this crew composition applies to all these rows. Now we are looking into this row, so this crew composition apply to us. Notice that fractional values like 0.125 foreman, for instance, means that a foreman will not be fully occupied when working on this task. Rather, he could supervise this task while concurrently supervising other tasks. And the same applies to equipment operators. Additional to the composition of crews working on this task, the other important information that we need from this manual is the consumption rate. The consumption rate is provided in this very last cell. I'm referring to 0.396. What this value tells us is that this whole crew will need 0.396 hours to produce 1 square meter of formwork. Now I will write down all this information in an Excel spreadsheet. So what do we have? We have 0.125 carpenter foreman. We have 4 carpenters. We have 2 laborers. We have 0.125 equipment operators. Okay, and I neglect for this example the power tools and the truck crane. Also, we need to insert the consumption rate, which is this value, 0.396. And that's great, but we are not done yet. Eventually, we need to insert all this information in Vico software. However, for Vico, we will need to decompose this consumption rate value. Currently, this value represents the work speed of this whole work crew. We need to decompose it such that it represents only individualistic labors. And what I mean by individualistic labors is that what will be this consumption rate if we have only one carpenter working on this task. I will show you how this is done in these slides. First of all, sum up all the crew composition and then figure out from this sum the ratio of a particular crew type against the whole crew. In this example, we have 64% of the time effort for this task is devoted by carpenters. So since carpenters make the majority of the crew consumption, we want to ask ourselves, what will be the consumption rate of each of these 4 carpenters? We do this by firstly finding the consumption rate of this whole crew when the crew is divided by a fraction of 4. And that shows the new consumption rate, which represents the labor hour needed to produce a meter square of formwork. But now we are interested in finding what is the stake that each of these crew types have from this consumption rate value. This should be proportional to the distribution of effort devoted by each of these workers as found in the upper table. And as such, we could find out the distributed consumption rate. This distributed consumption rate should normally sum up to 1.584. Of course, all this could be handled by one Excel formula, as I did in my spreadsheet. So all what I need to do is to insert the overall consumption rate as given in the manual and the crew composition, and the formula will calculate for me the distributed consumption rate, which will we need for Veeco software. Next, we need to find out the unit costs for each worker. Again, this could be based on experience, on a company's database, or on a cost estimate manual. The same manual that we just used has a table that includes all worker cost estimates. So for this task, we have 4 carpenters and 0.125 carpenter foreman. So we are interested here on rough carpenters. We are interested here on these guys, the rough carpenters. And as you see, the table includes all estimates of the salary in addition to the allowances. But we only care about the loaded monthly salary, which is this value, 1,446. From this monthly salary, we need to figure out the cost of worker per hour. So if we know that our worker works 6 days a week, this means 4 days off from every month. So the worker works 26 days a month and he works 8 hours a day. So this means that we need to divide this value by 26 and divide it again by 8. And that will provide us the labor cost per hour. Of course, this again could be written as an Excel formula, as I did here. And using this formula, when I insert the monthly salary, which is 1,447, it converts it into an hourly salary, which happens to be 7 dirhams per hour for each carpenter. We'll do the same thing for the foreman. So a carpenter foreman is a skilled foreman, and his monthly salary is around 2,055, which means that he costs us around 10 dirhams per hour. Now, from the cost manual, I got the salaries of laborers as well as the equipment operators, and that makes all the information needed for my human resources. But also I could add material resources. Assume we are using plywood, and the plywood's unit is meter square. And say for a meter square of formwork, we need 1.2 meter squared of plywood. So I'll create a formula, an Excel, to reflect this. 1.2 multiplied by the original quantity. And that's the amount of plywood that we need to construct this formwork. And maybe additional to the plywood, I need nails. Yeah. So, and let's assume that we need 10 nails for each meter square. So that's 10 multiplied by this quantity, and that sums to 633 nails. And the unit for nails is EA. Now we need to also insert the unit costs for the plywood and for the nails. So say a meter square of plywood costs us 30 dirhams, and the unit cost for the nail is 0.1 dirhams, 0.1 dirhams per nail. And that's it. Now from this Excel sheet, we know who will be working on this task and how long they may consume to complete it. And also we know what materials are consumed for each meter square of formwork. Now we will need to figure out who are the suppliers for each of these resources and on what basis will we pay them. Payments, as explained in class, could either be made on weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, monthly basis, on milestone basis, or on specific dates. So let's assume that this task is handled by a subcontractor called Al-Yahar Carpenters, and we agreed with the subcontractor that he will supply us with the foreman and his carpenters, but the labor will be supplied by us and the equipment operator will be supplied by us as the main contractors. And we made a contractual agreement with that supplier that we will pay him the expenses of his workers and materials on milestone basis. So whenever he achieves a location, we will compensate him for the expenses of that location. But normally our in-house workers, we would pay them on monthly basis. Of course, all this will change for every task, for every contractual agreement, depending on what supplier you are dealing with. In the next series of videos, I will explain how to insert all this information in Veeco software. Thank you.